everyone hear me okay? Is this, all right, cool. So hi, I'm just going to start off by introducing myself. I'm Dennis Rue. I'm a senior product manager at Shopify. So I started off my career as a software developer, and then I transitioned into product about like 7 years ago. I've been really fortunate. I've been fortunate enough to see companies at various stages of growth up close. So I became a founding team member of a seed stage startup called Milo. That's actually where the CEO was like, hey, you're a dev, but maybe you might want to be a product manager. So I got really lucky there. I then went on to found my own consulting business, which I named Free Lunch. There's a fun story there too, if you want to ask me about that later. And then I was able to experience my first IPO at a company called Olo. Then most recently, I joined a public company servicing millions of businesses across 175 countries, Shopify. So when thinking about what I wanted to talk about today, I asked myself, like, of all the teams that I've been a part of, what made the best teams successful? And the pattern that really stuck out to me was that the best teams were mission-driven and vision-led. Like I know that sounds like I'm trying to serve you like Silicon Valley Kool-Aid, but let me explain. So regardless of company size, whether it was a 5-person seed stage startup or a 10,000-person global company, the best teams were aligned, highly focused, and driving towards a mission. And they were also using vision to drive strategy, share context, execute, and innovate. So let's talk about missions for a second. When I think about a mission, I think of it as the answer to, like, why am I doing this? Like, why am I here? It's the single thing that everyone on the team can point to as the target and say, you know what, we're all marching in that direction. And I just realized I haven't been using the slides at all, and nobody told me. So let me go back and run it back again. So sorry about that. I forgot these are not connected. So what made the best team successful? You just missed like the big hero images. That's all that was. All right, aligned, highly focused, driving towards a mission, using vision, drive strategy. Yeah. So mission is, why am I doing this, right? Why am I here? So at Shopify, the company mission is to make commerce better for everyone. In an effort to accomplish this, we have teams at Shopify that focus on making commerce better for entrepreneurs, better for shoppers, better for partners, just to name a few. We do a lot of other things too. And I want to just throw in a disclaimer here. What you're about to see is not like company secrets. This is just like a hypothetical example, so don't like tweet my boss that I'm divulging company secrets. Cool. So like a mission to help entrepreneurs might read something like, yeah, let's help entrepreneurs grow. Then for the mission of help entrepreneurs grow, we might have a team contributing to that mission with one of their own that says help entrepreneurs use data to make better decisions. Then we might have a team contributing to that mission that says build the best dashboard so entrepreneurs can monitor their business. And then you might have an even smaller team with a mission that says, you know what, we're going to build the best data model for commerce so we can power that dashboard. And finally, you have like the individual task owned by somebody on the team, right? Like I'm going to go like design the model because I'm the data scientist or the data engineer or whatever it might be. So now let's like zoom in on what has become an incredibly nuanced mission for an individual on the data modeling team, right? If someone were to ask this person, like, what do you do at Shopify? This person should be able to say, like, I'm here to build the best data model for commerce so that we can build the best data dashboard for monitoring so that entrepreneurs can use data to make better decisions, so that entrepreneurs can grow their businesses, so that we can make commerce better for everyone. And like, yeah, like nobody's actually going to say that whole thing, but like you get the point of how it rolls up. Cool. So aligning around a mission provides a team with clarity on the most important problem, focus on a unified direction, and lays the groundwork for impact-driven incentives. Right? The team understands what needs to be done and what success looks like. So I want to highlight that last point around impact-driven incentives. So right, like shipping the thing is incredibly important, but only if it's the right thing that gets you closer to accomplishing your mission. Right? So I found that like teams that have ambiguity around promotion cycles or how to move up often do so because the target for success is unclear or constantly moving. So when you don't have a mission, leads or your managers or your boss, whatever, they don't really know how to help their team optimize for impact because the target's moving. So without a mission, how do you even measure success? With missions, leads can set the right goals, measure against those goals, and recognize people accordingly whenever they deliver. And on the other hand, like when teams were operating without a mission, I noticed that it was much harder to create a cohesive product, right? You would have teams optimizing towards different goals, all with their own agendas. The lack of alignment would often result in disjointed experiences and technical debt. Teams would often waste cycles arguing about what the goal should be or how they should get there. Without a mission, too much was like left up to the imagination. And another side effect was that it was incredibly hard for leads to pave the path for their like direct reports to get to impact. And without this path, like people would often optimize for the wrong incentives. So when you're optimizing for the wrong incentives, right? Like you might ask a person that really isn't working on a team with a mission, like, hey, what are you working on? And they might say, oh, I'm just doing this thing that my CEO asked me to do, or like I'm doing this thing that my boss asked me to do, rather than focusing on solving a problem for the user, right? And then this person then spends their time and energy figuring out how to optimize for what their boss wants to hear. Without understanding the mission, they're more likely to make a decision based on like what their boss or how their boss is going to react rather than trying to fix problems. I see people nodding and that scares me. I'm so sorry you're in that situation. This is not the slide I wanted you to resonate with. So like what happens when you have an entire team optimizing around like increasing a metric without actually considering the user or considering other teams, right? The solutions that get proposed are often tailored towards hitting your goal without any regard for how that solution is going to impact other parts of the business, right? If somebody came to you and was like, hey, like, our mission is to make $1 billion. Cool, I'm young, I'm hungry, I'm smart. What's the fastest way to get there? Why don't we rob a bank, right? Like, that's not really the solution you want to hear. And this doesn't just affect individual contributors, right? Like, when leaders get challenged on how they've spent the team's time, they're forced to create meaning where there might not be any, right? So they can't justify their investments, which more oftentimes than not spirals into a situation where people rely on politics to cover up their like poor investments, right? Sunk cost fallacy, right? So the teams that suffered from like low productivity and high turnover often felt that their time and energy were wasted due to a lack of direction and on solutions that locked innovation. These teams also felt that they were not making an impact, or the impact they were making were not being recognized. So I know I kind of like went like super negative here, but I just wanted to show the consequences of like, please establish a mission. So like that's not to say that it's an all or nothing game. Like organizations are huge, there's lots of teams. In every organization, you'll have a mix of strong leaders and not so strong leaders, right? The strong ones will know how to create alignment and drive progress, even in an environment of ambiguity. Like they know how to create that oasis, and I feel like everybody knows this. Like you know where the good teams are, and these teams often end up being talked about as like the better teams to be at in an organization. Cool. So like we established why mission is important, but like let's talk about vision. So how does vision play a role in all of this? So once you've broken down your mission into objectives, by the way, like people use mission and objectives interchangeably. At least I do. I like mission because I think it sounds cooler, but you need to start executing once you have that, right? So vision to me is the first step towards execution and innovation. So the way I like to think about it is that a vision should paint a picture of what the world is going to look like when you've achieved your mission. Like shout out to the first talk of the day, it was great. Like. So great, and like how do you go about establishing your vision? Well, I mean, you talk to your users, you do your market research, you experiment, you analyze the data, you do all that stuff, right? But it's the thing that comes after that's the really hard part. You got to just like sit down, stare at a wall, and think. Like, I'm not gonna lie, this is the hardest part of the process for me personally. This sounds easy, but in today's day and world, like, you got Slack, you got social media, you have current world events, remote work, like your family asking you for stuff at home. It's really hard to just like sit down and then feel justified staring at a wall for 3 hours, like just thinking about stuff. So like, when you close your eyes, how vividly can you see your product solving the problem for the user? The more you do this, the more vivid that picture is going to be. Like earlier in my career, I would often gauge my success on how busy I was, right? Like the more I was being tactical, the more meetings I attended, the more successful I felt. This works just like social media, right? Like you do the 30-minute meeting, you get the dopamine hit, you trick yourself into thinking that like you move the needle. Look, I'm not saying meetings don't move the needle. Like they're great for sharing context and getting alignment, which are both incredibly important things. But the trap a lot of people fall into, myself included, was that we trick ourselves into thinking that we can get away with not doing the strategic work, not sitting there thinking for hours at a time, because you're averaging 40 hours a week doing the tactical stuff, and it's not an excuse. So you go, you sit down, you think, you do your vision quest. The next step is to create a roadmap for how you realize that vision, right? You gotta come up with a strategy. So when building a strategy, you want to work backwards from your vision and ask yourself, like, what's stopping us from realizing this vision today? Like, what's missing? Every time you find an answer to that question, that answer should then become a milestone towards your vision. So if I could travel back in time to like 2006 when Shopify was founded and be a fly on the wall, I would imagine like a strategy session took place that looks something like this. So you have the CEO saying, our vision is to make commerce better for everyone so that businesses can focus on what they do best. Someone else in the room goes, okay, well, why can't we do that today? Like, what's missing? Somebody else answers, you know what, commerce is really complex. There's a lot going on. It's really hard. It's a hard problem to solve. Cool, well, like, okay, if it's complex, like, how do we make it easier? What can we do about it? You know what, selling's really hard. Why don't we just make it easier to sell stuff online? Okay, that seems like a pretty good milestone. You help people sell stuff online, makes commerce better for lots of people. How do we sell stuff online? Well, you know what, we should just like make the best online store and then let people sell stuff on that store. Okay, cool, like what's that gonna look like? What does the best online store look like? Well, you know what, businesses are all very different. Everyone has this unique footprint. Everybody wants to sell different things, do different things. Let's customize all the things on the website, or let the entrepreneur do that. Cool, wait, but like, doesn't that actually make things more complex? Like you're letting people customize stuff, doesn't that add complexity? All right, well, let's remove the complexity. Let's absorb it by making themes and making it super easy for you to make a website. So in this one strategy session, you've now worked backwards from your vision and said, okay, you know what? We're going to start off by building themes so that like entrepreneurs and businesses can customize that theme. We're going to make the best online store that works for that business. And then we're going to make it easy to sell online so that we can make commerce better for everyone. Cool. So once you have your strategy, you're going to have conversations with your team on critical design discussions, right? So which technologies do we use? Like, are we building a web app? Are we going native? Like, should we be prescriptive? Should we not? And there's tons more that you're going to talk about. Whenever you're at a crossroads and a sound argument can be made on either side of the equation, that's a sign that you need a principle, right? So anytime there's even a chance of a disagree and commit between really smart people, make that decision a principle. So now let's like go back to 2006 and see what principles we might find along this strategy, right? So we're back to being that fly on the wall. We overhear a conversation around complexity. You overhear an engineer that says, you know what, that solution is actually really too difficult. Like, I don't know if we should be doing that. The CFO in the room is like, you know what, that's too expensive. We probably can't do that. We're like a really young startup. We don't have that much money. The project manager says, you know, it's going to take too long. We need to get to market faster. Like, we can't do this. But then the CEO says, you know what, this is what's best for the merchants, what's best for the business. Okay, so these are all valid points, especially for Shopify back then, right? It's a fledgling startup, short on money, needs to get to market. They need to pick a path, go for it. So the room decides, you know what, we're going to make this a principle. We're going to absorb the complexity so that businesses don't have to. This then goes on to become a principle that's referenced in all future discussions. Whenever you're up against somebody making a really good argument, we can't build this too expensive, too hard, logically makes sense, and you have somebody saying this is what's best for the user, it's a hard discussion to have, but now you have this principle. We will always absorb the complexity so that our customers do not have to. And when I really think about it, vision, strategy, principles, they all culminate into context, right? So the best teams are religious about sharing and seeking out context. No one likes documentation, like everyone's afraid of publishing something and being criticized for it, but you have to create a culture where you're rewarded for sharing. In a team setting, especially in a remote environment, context is like currency. The more of it you have, the better your team will be on making returns on your investment. So which finally leads us to execution and innovation. Having context allows your team, the experts at what they do, to come up with creative and innovative solutions. So some of my favorite memories of being a PM are when a designer or engineer has come to me with something they've been working on, and it's so much better than what I was imagining. Right? Like, I'm a PM, I'm writing requirements, I'm like, oh yeah, this is gonna be great. And then they showed me something like, oh, I never thought of that. And that's so much better than what I was doing. Because they understood the context, right? Like, they were able to take that strategy, take the plan, apply their own unique perspective and life experiences to it, and come up with something incredible. So this approach has allowed me to realize 3 incredible returns. The team can now run itself, right? Individuals are able to innovate within their craft because they understand where we're going. And I've become much quicker on my feet. Right? Before establishing a vision, if someone asked me like, hey, Dennis, like, why should we do this? Like, why shouldn't we go in that other direction? To be honest, my response would be like, oh, let me get back to you on that. Like, I got to go and think about it. But now that I have a vision in mind, it's a quick check against my mental model to see, all right, is what you're proposing fitting into the strategy that I have in my head? Does it fit within the principles that I have in my head? This has really helped me to become a more thoughtful, opinionated, and direct leader. So in summary, right, the best teams use missions to drive high alignment, focus, and the right incentives. And the best teams use vision to lead strategy, context building, so that they can drive execution and innovation. Cool. That's it for me. Thank you.
Questions? Yes. Right in the center.
Thanks. That was a great talk. To paraphrase Mike Tyson, everyone's got a vision, mission, and strategy till they get punched in the face.
Yeah, please don't punch me in the face.
So how do you deal with flexibility, adaptability when things start to go wrong?
Yeah, so it actually becomes easier to pivot when you understand what the long-term vision is. So if your target that you're trying to hit is further out, the more flexibility and room you have to pivot along the way and find a different way to get there. So to take the example that I was using throughout the presentation, if our strategy is to make commerce better for everyone, and we set off on this path to build like the best online store possible, something goes wrong, we get delayed, there are other ways to make commerce better for everyone. Maybe instead of an online store, we start focusing on the buyers. Maybe we create a marketplace app. Maybe we focus on the partners, help everybody else that's a vendor do whatever they're doing better. So the degree of the pivot can differentiate depending on the strategy that you want to take. You can even pivot within the whole online store thing. But that's actually why it's so important to have that end destination be so clear, because it lets you be nimble, it lets you move around however you need to, while still going in the right direction. Yeah.
Yes, other questions?
So my question is, how much of I don't know if you remember the circles that you had with being the best commerce and then all the way down to building the best data model.
Yes.
Yeah, so from that slide, how much of that work needs to be done by, let's say, the top leaders or the executives versus autonomously done by, maybe somebody in the middle who can then break it down further? So what is your guidance on that, or how do you recommend getting to that point where it can kind of develop on its own, or should it even?
Well, great question. So I think there's one leader associated with each sort of rung of that ring. I'd say like the big banner statement of make commerce better for everyone, that's owned by the CEO. The next ring is maybe owned by like a VP, then a director, then some team level manager, then some IC. And so really your responsibility is like the CEO is going to be thinking about the world in the next 50 years or 10 to 50 years, let's say. Some CEOs think in hundreds or thousands of years. Like I don't even want to imagine what Elon thinks about. But then you have your executive team that are thinking in orders of maybe 3 to 5 to 10 years. Then you have your directors thinking in 3 to 5 years, and you have your teams thinking 18 months to 3 years maybe. And then you have like the one person who's working on the project. It's like, yeah, what am I doing for the next 3 months or 6 months? And each one of those people are responsible for being able to see the vision to whatever time frame is appropriate for them.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry.
Time.
How do you communicate that, or how do you track that? Is there like a tool that you use for that, or is it just on a piece of paper somewhere? How does the whole organization get visibility into that, or is that even important?
If I find a good answer to this, I think I can make a lot of money. It's really hard, right? So like the hardest thing about any team is teaching people to share context and then teaching people to go seek out the context, right? It's kind of like a relationship. Like I don't know if anyone else has heard this, but somebody once told me that in order for a successful marriage, you each have to love each other 150%, that you got to go above and beyond. It's the same thing with like a product team. Each person needs to share 150% of the context, but also needs to have 150% desire to go find the context, right? That's the only way I've seen it work, because I'm not gonna lie to you and be like, yeah, like write the document and publish it and all will read it. They're not gonna read it, right? So it really is just repetition, sharing context. Like someone said it earlier in the panel, like you just got to repeat yourself all the time. Tell the story. Make it easy for people to understand. Yeah.
Can you recommend some strategies for creating a culture where people are rewarded for sharing?
Yes. So I've seen it done 2 ways. One is where feedback is treated as a gift. And it's incredibly hard to do this, but if you create a culture in which feedback is treated as a gift, people understand that they can publish something. You're just representing your ideas as you are today, but the reward at the end of sharing that is you're going to get feedback for you to level up and become a better at what you do. The other way is it works, but it works for the objective, but it fails the mission. The other way is just like praising everybody for like going up and sharing the thing without giving feedback. So you feel good, but then people might be sharing garbage. So like you don't really want to go that way. Like positive reinforcement's great, but I think feedback and like tough love is better. So I'd say go with feedback as a gift. Yeah.
Can you just combine the two? Always give praise, but always give feedback as well?
There's another talk about like what good feedback looks like, and there's lots on what good feedback looks like, but sometimes. Yeah.
Next question right there.
Given the changes to how we work, what are some of the things that you've done to sort of operationalize that thinking time for yourself and your team?
Yeah, so this is one of the best pieces of advice I've ever gotten, is from my lead. When I first joined Shopify, he said, take like a sticky note, create a tic-tac-toe matrix, right? On one side you have morning, afternoon, evening, and then across the other axis you have, I guess the days of the week. And he just told me to like monitor yourself for a couple of weeks and write down when are your energy levels the best, when are they the highest. I've always told myself that I was a night owl, like I don't like mornings, I'm groggy. Turns out I'm a liar, because when I did this exercise, I'm actually a morning person, and I was blown away. So what I did then was I took 2 to 3 hour blocks, and this is another thing that I learned about myself. Like I can sprint mentally at 100% capacity for about 2 to 3 hours, and then I need to take a break. So knowing that about myself, I just started to block off my morning calendar, 2 to 3 hours every single morning for focus time. And I said, I'm not going to take meetings. I'm not going to talk to you. This is for me to be strategic, and then afternoon is when you can have my time. Because I knew that the return on investment for that strategic time would be so much better for the company than me just like serving people by answering their questions all morning.
Awesome. Other questions? Thought I'd keep thinking I see hands, but no. I had a question. When in a lot of the structure where all the different layers with respect to the mission, the vision, a lot of it looked like.
I'm Korean, so sorry. Sorry, go ahead.
I don't know if my question can top that. But my question was like, how do you integrate this with OKRs? Because I noticed a lot of the structure seemed to follow a lot of that OKR structure.
Yeah, so OKRs is just one framework. I've seen companies use other frameworks, but yeah, OKR is by far the most popular one. You can substitute objective, so OKRs being objectives and key results. You can substitute the O with the M, so just missions or objectives. Key results are, your leaders should be able to figure out what the framework is and the KPIs that you need to hit to be able to measure success for your objective/mission. So back in the early days of Shopify, if the mission was, say you're the director of the themes team, your objective is cool. Let's make the best themes ever, and a KPI might be, okay, well, we'll know that we have the best themes ever when we're getting X installs per week or something like that, right? And so you can totally layer on the OKR framework to missions.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you very much, and we'll move on to the next person. Thank you. Excellent.